we have some very interesting information and stats about Habs 5th-round pick Tyler Thorpe that point towards him being the next unicorn in the Habs system. We're going to get into all of that. Plus, we have to discuss the Habs lineup coming up the next year and some articles that are going kind of crazy, saying guys like Joshua Waugh won't even crack the rotation and Logan Mailloux actually might. There is a ton to discuss on this episode of Habs Digest, and we're going to start, Jesse, with Mailloux. And not just Mailloux, we'll get into Joshua Waugh a bit later, but this is a huge decision for the Habs and mostly the coaching staff. And if you're interested in Habs prospect Tyler Thorpe, feel free to jump ahead. There will be a timestamp, but this is interesting too. And I'll link these articles down below that we're going to discuss. The first one comes from the Hockey News, and they had an article about whether Logan Mailloux should open the season with the Canadiens. And Jesse, I just want to come out straight up and say, I don't see this happening. And I want to get your opinion on this as well. And Connor, I believe it's Tamalti. You guys go check out the article down below. It raises some interesting points. But if you look at, this is NHL.com's prediction of what the Habs defense is going to look like next season, at least the starting 6. You'll see that there's 5 left-handed shots there in Guhle, Harris, Hudson, Matheson, and Xhekaj. The only right-handed shot is Savard. And obviously the Habs will need a right-hand defenseman. But one big thing, Jesse, is that Justin Barron is not waiver exempt anymore. So if they want to send him back down to Laval after calling him up, other teams can put in a claim for him, and just like they were worried, about Primeau last year, I'm sure the same worry will apply to Barron. So, in my mind, I know people are higher on Mailloux than Barron, but Barron does have a bit more experience. He's proven to be solid at the NHL level, a decent goal scorer. If the Habs are going for a 7th defenseman, they want to bring in another right D. I think it has to be him, if not even something Reinbacher in the future. I like Mailloux as a prospect. I just don't see him being ready yet.
The youth movement is going to be in full effect with the Montreal Canadiens next year. But just to what degree is really the question, because we know Jeff Gordon has said he wants to keep those spots available for those younger players. And if we're reading between the lines, almost he wants to create those spots for those young players, those young forwards, but also, those young defensemen like Mailloux as well, right? So the big question is like, we saw the Jonathan Kovacevic trade. The writing was on the wall. We're making space again with that idea for younger guys that can play the right side. We're talking about, of course, Mailloux. Mm-hmm. We're talking about Barron. We're talking about Struble as well. Of course, it doesn't help Mailloux's case here in this conversation where Guhle can play that right side, right? Because if we're projecting for next year, very high chance that Guhle is playing on that right side and doing a great job of it, right? But the question is like, what Justin Barron are we going to see next year? Like, we know tenure is so important in the NHL. The fact he's not going to have to clear waivers. He's got that experience. Like, it matters a lot, right? Like, experience in the NHL, it matters where you're sitting in that plane, in that bus. Like, it's everything. It's also part of that asset management. But I almost wonder, Josh, like, what's your opinion on this in our viewers as well? But I always feel like Justin Barron's in like a no-win situation with the Habs. Like, if he has a good year, okay, his trade value goes up, and they make a deal for him. If he doesn't have a good year, well, even though you're not maxing on your return, you just have so much space that you need to kind of clear, right? That he's gone in that case, right? So I don't know. It's just like, I want to believe in the player, and obviously you want to reward like good play on the ice, but it just seems like, Mailloux, Barron having those similar type of games with Mailloux maybe being a little bit bigger, maybe having a little bit more offensive upside. Of course, you got to feel like Barron's going to get the start, but he's going to be on thin ice. And I think it's, not going to be long at all before we see Mailloux back in the NHL.
Yeah, I guess Barron's kind of expendable in a way. Like you said, if he's really, really good, the Habs can probably get a decent return for him and clear up some space, right? Or, they could keep him, but, look at the amount of deep prospects behind him. If he's really not very good, yeah, you're right, time is up. If he's right in the middle, well, odds are one of the other defense prospects are going to jump him into the pecking order. And I hate to say it, because I think Barron has shown that, 6 goals for the Habs and not that many games. Like, he's good, but there were some points this year where he looked like he was being outplayed by Mailloux and Laval, and I would love to see a Justin Barron bounce back. I'm sure you guys would as well, but What do you think about Barron? At this point, are you confident taking him over Mailloux for next season? I'm sure some people will say yes, some people will say no. I'd love to hear from you down below. But Jesse, I want to move on to the other guy. This is from another article from Daily Hive where they project the Habs lines, and they actually had Alex Barré-Boulet on the third line, which I completely disagree with, but you never know. If he has a good camp, maybe. Fourth line, Harvey Pinard, Evans, Anderson, and the notable exclusions are Joshua Waugh and Michael Pezzetta. I don't want to spend too much time on this, Jesse, because I think we're both very much in agreement. I think a lot of the fans are going to be in agreement as well that Joshua Waugh did enough in 23 games last year. I know 9 points in 23 games doesn't jump off the page at you, but he looked like an NHLer. And I just feel like, Harvey Pinard had a great first call up to the NHL a couple of years ago when the Habs were really injury riddled. Michael Pezzetta brings an aspect of physicality that would be lacking if he wasn't in the lineup. Barré-Boulet, don't really know. I guess we'll have to wait and see, but I feel like Waugh's done enough to make this team, and I feel like he's done enough to make this team over a guy like Pezzetta or Harvey Pinard. I know need is something, but I don't see a world where he doesn't make the lineup, and I don't know. Am I crazy? Am I maybe getting too hyped on this guy? But I just don't see a world where he is, the 13th or 14th forward on this team heading into next year.
I've been hyped on Joshua Waugh for a minute, right? That's our boy.
Yeah.
And all that he did last year was just kind of make me feel more confident in that take that he is a quality NHLer. In fact, a player that should slot in on our second line next year with Kirby, Dach, with Alex Newhook to start the year, right? I know if we're playing the probability game, yes, Anderson, yes, Armia would maybe be more of a lock again with the whole tenure. But if we're just talking about pure merit, we're talking about wanting to have more offense for this team, hitting the ground off running to start off next year to really be in the mix. This is the type of player that you put on your second line. Joshua Waugh, somebody who knows how to play with quality players. Not just that, make good players even better, really bring them out. Again, Kirby Dach, such a great player. Joshua Waugh, his number one skill is his hockey IQ.
Yeah.
So really be able to take advantage, and make a Kirby Dach just so much better, make him look better on the ice, right? So I could see that line of Newhook, of Dach working really nicely together next year. I think he definitely deserves a lot more respect than what this list is showing.
Yeah, and if you made it to this point in the video, you gotta leave a comment about Joshua Waugh. You have to. It's mandatory. No, you can do what you want. But I seriously want to hear from a lot of you guys. And we love to look through the comments and the opinions, because Waugh is a guy that I think pretty much unanimously is in this lineup for most Habs fans. Like, again, a guy like Armia on an expiring deal, like, they can move pieces as well to make room for him. I just think he showed too much potential to not be in the lineup. But I want to hear what you guys think as well. As we're going to move into this final topic, Jesse, this could be a future Hab. And let's be realistic. He's probably not, but I think he's getting a bit underrated. We've talked about every Habs pick except for this guy, it feels like, Jesse. And, well, maybe not every single pick, but most picks. But this is something that I didn't really pick up on until just today when I was looking through Twitter, and there was a page on Twitter. I'll bring this up. VVV Stock Guy 1. Go check them out on Twitter for this whole thread. It's very, very interesting. I saw it when I was scrolling Habs Twitter. At last Friday's Habs development camp, I really liked Tyler Thorpe's first goal. It was an excellent shot, an NHL shot. So I started digging a little more. Looks like we have another kid that profiles like Florian Xhekaj here. He was passed over in the WHL 2020 Bantam draft. He was 5'7", 155. He didn't join the WHL until after the start of his 17-year-old season, where he started to blossom. And if you look at his height today, he is 6'4" according to HockeyDB, 6'5" according to some other references. He only turns 19 in August, 23 goals in 51 games in the WHL. But the biggest thing with him, Jesse, is the rarity of what he brings. Something that we've talked about a bit with, I guess, Arber, but mostly Florian in terms of unicornness. This is his elite prospects bio. It's uncommon to see a player of Thorpe's stature shoot in motion and off the catch with such impressive form. His hands always stay in front of his body, and he really elevates the top arm to put his full body weight behind the net. He also has a knack for deflections, bolstered by between checks positioning. He's got his positioning down, he's good at deflections, and he's got a great shot. You go watch some highlights of Tyler Thorpe, Jesse. These one-times are kind of crazy. He's quick with his trigger. He seems like a guy that really could put it together. Now, his skating is definitely not the best, and his defense is certainly, not his strong suit, but he's a physical forward with a big frame, with an NHL-ready shot borderline. I feel like, again, with the way the Habs have developed some of their prospects and improved the weaknesses of some guys, wherever he ends up, if he plays another year in the WHL or even in Laval in a year or two, I feel like there is a path, not a likely path, but a path for him to develop where he just ends up being like a solid lower tier lineup goal scorer that also brings physicality.
Yeah, for sure. He's been called a diamond in the rough, and that's very similar to Florian Xhekaj in terms of just having those raw skills. For sure skating isn't his strongest suit, but he still skates pretty well for his size all the same, right? And again, having an NHL ready shot, that's a big thing to just kind of cross off the list right there for him, So for sure, just kind of needs to work on his consistency a little bit more, right? But when you got that big frame, you're able to skate well, you have a shot, like, we're not comparing him to Bennett Seneca, right? No. But we can see like this type of player, if you can kind of bring up those skills, is so highly valued in this league, for so many reasons. Having that good hand-eye coordination. We know the Habs have needed that size for a long time, right? So he's got some runway again to become a better player. He's gonna have a lot more player development than under previous Habs regimes now. That's a really good thing that this system is doing right. You know, that Adam Nichols is going to be in his ears, kind of giving him the support that he needs to really grow as a player. But we're dealing with some pretty good tools there at the same time, right? Having that shot, you know, that good size, just need to work on that skating, that defense a little bit more. But those are things that many other players making their way to the NHL have worked upon and have had good careers as a result of that.
Yeah, and I think he's just very raw. Like it's not. I think it's not fair for me to say skating's never going to be great. This never going to be great. He's still very raw, and that's just what happens. But you know, what I really like about this whole thing, Jesse, is the Habs. Every pick we've talked about kind of fits a need that the Habs don't totally have yet. Like there are some prospects who are big, this and that, but like this size with a decent goal scoring upside. I mean, even if he's just a Laval guy. That's such a valuable thing, even in the AHL. We focus mostly on the Montreal Canadiens, but sometimes these picks are sort of made with like, yeah, maybe he'll make the NHL, but could contribute in other ways somewhere else. So there's a lot of good stuff to look at here with Tyler Thorpe. And he plays, if you watch his highlights, he plays a lot in front of the net, a lot of putbacks. He's really good at, with the hand eye on the rebounds. So he's raw. We'll see what happens with him. But even if he ends up as like a solid guy in Laval, I think it could be really interesting. Go watch some highlight tape of Tyler Thorpe and leave your thoughts down below because I kind of like this guy. I think his highlight tape is great. We'll see where he ends up. Is he likely going to be a Hab? No, probably most certainly not. A 5th round pick? You never know. But Joshua Watt was a 5th round pick, so I guess you really never know what's going to happen. But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all so much for watching every single day. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.